I smoothed the silk of my blouse one last time, my fingers lingering over the delicate buttons, feeling the faint weight of anticipation settle in my chest. From the floor-to-ceiling window behind me, the skyline of New York gleamed under the morning sun, towering glass buildings, the streets alive with honking horns and the shuffle of hurried lives. I could hear the muted thrum of the summit crowd below, their excitement humming like electricity in the air. My phone buzzed on the sleek mahogany desk, a name flashing that I hadn't seen in years. A single message, dripping with that old, familiar scorn. Still in that tiny office? Hard to imagine you here. I swallowed, feeling a familiar knot of hurt, pride, and a touch of irony twist in my stomach. Tiny office. That was what they called it. Back then, it had been a cramped little space with a flickering fluorescent light, a desk that wobbled, and dreams bigger than the walls could hold. Now, standing here with a speaker badge in my hand, about to address some of the wealthiest people on the planet, I let a slow, private smile curl across my lips. They had mocked me, doubted me, dismissed me. And yet, here I was, poised, composed, and unstoppable. The leather of my heels clicked against the marble floor as I straightened, inhaling the faint scent of espresso lingering in the air, grounding myself. One deep breath, one step closer to the stage, time to face the past without flinching. I remember that tiny office like it was etched into my skin. The walls were a faded cream, dotted with coffee stains that refused to be scrubbed away. My desk sagged in the middle, threatening to collapse under the weight of papers, unpaid bills, and a laptop that often froze at the worst possible moments. I was 24, eyes wide with hope but shoulders hunched under the weight of doubt. Not just my own, but theirs. My family, my so-called friends, even a few colleagues, would smirk at my ambition. "You'll never get anywhere in that little cubicle," my cousin Mark had said once, leaning against the doorway, arms crossed. "You should just settle." His words had cut deeper than I expected. I remember the lump rising in my throat, the way my hands trembled as I clutched a pen like it was a lifeline. I wanted to scream, to defend myself, but I didn't. I didn't yet have the strength. Then there was Grandma Helen. She had slipped a small, worn notebook across my cluttered desk one rainy afternoon. Its leather cover was cracked, the pages yellowed, but she looked at me with such unwavering certainty. "Write everything down," she said softly. "Your plans, your dreams, even the mistakes. Someday, this will remind you of what you're capable of. Nobody else's opinion matters but yours." Her words were like a spark in the dark. That night, sitting under the dim glow of a desk lamp, I opened the notebook and began scribbling. Ideas, visions, strategies. I poured my fear and determination onto those pages until my hand cramped. It felt like planting seeds in a garden no one believed would bloom. The next morning, I packed up my tiny office with more resolve than I realized I possessed. I called it my first battlefield, though it had barely more than a chair and a desk. I was leaving behind the voices that told me I was too small, too insignificant. I would stand alone if I had to. And in that solitude, I found the first taste of freedom, the freedom to build something that was truly mine, on my terms. I didn't tell anyone when I rented my first real office, not the one that would later earn the tiny label in my family's eyes. It was small, yes, but it was mine, and that mattered far more than their opinions. Every morning, I walked past the glass doors with a mix of nerves and quiet determination, reminding myself of Grandma Helen's words, "Nobody else's opinion matters but yours." My mentor, Claudia Bennett, a woman who had clawed her way to the top of the finance world, saw something in me that even I doubted. She didn't just offer advice, she offered belief. "You have talent, but talent isn't enough," she said during one of our first late-night meetings. "You need grit, patience, and the willingness to be invisible while you build something extraordinary." Her words stung, but they became my mantra. The nights were the hardest. I would sit at my desk, the office light casting long shadows, scrolling through spreadsheets, sending countless emails, learning every detail of an industry that initially felt cold and unwelcoming. I burned the candle at both ends, often feeling the ache of exhaustion pressing against my bones. Self-doubt came like a persistent visitor, whispering that I wasn't ready, that my tiny office would remain tiny forever. But each small victory, landing my first client, securing my first profitable contract, felt like sunlight breaking through the clouds. I learned to celebrate privately. I would light a vanilla-scented candle, pour myself a cup of dark roast coffee, and silently acknowledge the progress no one else saw. I started investing in small touches, a comfortable chair, a framed certificate, a single piece of abstract art that reminded me of possibility. Each object whispered a promise. This is yours. You earned it. Through it all, I kept my growth hidden from my family. I posted photos sparingly, captions neutral, never hinting at the deals, the contracts, the clients I met, or the growing team I began to lead. I wanted no cheers, no judgments, only the satisfaction of knowing that every step I took was earned, untainted by their skepticism. And slowly, quietly, my little venture became something bigger. I hired a small team, people who believed in the same vision, who worked with a passion I hadn't realized I could inspire. Together, we turned challenges into opportunities, failures into lessons. I became a master of strategy, of resilience, of the art of proving without announcing. The tiny office that once seemed a cage had transformed into the launchpad of a dream that no one, including me, had imagined fully. Even as I grew, I never forgot the lessons learned in that cramped space. Every late night, every rejection, every moment of quiet perseverance became a brick in the foundation of what I would someday show the world. And someday they would see it, not in words, but in the undeniable reality of success. The morning the invitations went out, I felt a flicker of something I hadn't felt in years, anticipation mixed with the tiniest hint of vindication. My parents, my cousin Mark, even a few old colleagues, all of them would see me today. Not the tentative, struggling woman they remembered. No, today they would see the woman who had quietly built something they had all doubted. I met them at the lobby of the Summit's hotel, the air buzzing with a hum of ambitious chatter and polished heels on marble floors. They looked around, momentarily impressed by the grandiose space, but I knew the thoughts running through their heads. She's still the same, probably just a lucky fluke. I guided them upstairs to my suite-like office, a space I had painstakingly curated. Expensive abstract art adorned the walls, subtle yet commanding. My bookshelves were lined with volumes on leadership, finance, and personal growth. A sleek mahogany desk gleamed under the soft glow of designer lamps. On the corner, a single, delicate notebook sat open, Grandma Helen's gift, now filled with years of planning, vision, and meticulous notes that had guided every move I'd made. They paused at the doorway, taking it all in. My mother's lips pressed into a thin line, disbelief flickering in her eyes. Mark's jaw tightened. He looked as if he wanted to say something but couldn't find words that would survive the weight of reality. My former colleagues whispered, not so quietly, about the luck I must have had, but the tremor in their voices betrayed them. I let them soak it in. I wanted every second of recognition to land without interruption, to make them understand the effort, the late nights, the failures, and the relentless persistence that had led here. Then, with a calm that belied the adrenaline rushing through me, I spoke. Welcome. I'm honored to have you here. What you're seeing isn't luck. It's the result of years of work, of believing in myself when no one else would, of building a company from the ground up in a space you once mocked as tiny. Today, I'm not just showing you my office. I'm showing you what your doubts couldn't stop. The silence that followed was tangible. My father's hand clenched briefly at his side. My mother's eyes glistened, a mix of shame and awe washing over her features. Mark's mouth opened, then closed again. They were witnessing, in real time, the truth of my journey. I continued, letting my voice carry the gravity of every struggle and triumph. This company is mine. I lead it. We've secured international clients. We've innovated in ways that have changed the industry. And yes, I gestured toward the skyline through the glass windows. This success all started from a tiny office. one that I made larger than any of your doubts could contain. The disbelief in the room was almost beautiful to watch, the shift from mockery to stunned realization, from doubt to respect. For a moment, I let them sit with that truth. They had imagined me as small, limited, constrained by the opinions of others. Now, the room reflected the exact opposite, a woman in command of her destiny, unshakable, undeniable. I could feel the shift in the room, subtle yet undeniable. The air had changed, the balance of power had tilted, not by threat, but by truth. I wasn't the same person they had dismissed in passing comments or cruel jokes. I was someone who had earned every ounce of success, and now I had the choice of how much of my world they could step into. I looked at my parents first. "I want to help you," I said gently, "but only if you're willing to do the work too." My mother blinked, unsure if she'd heard me correctly. "You need to stop worrying about appearances and start living authentically. Pursue what excites you, what challenges you. Support each other instead of holding each other back." Her eyes welled up, and I could see the internal shift, the first step toward shedding years of fear and judgment. Mark's smirk had vanished, replaced by a hesitant, almost cautious curiosity. "And you?" he asked, voice tight. I met his gaze evenly. "You need to stop underestimating people and stop underestimating yourself. Find a passion worth committing to, something that stretches you, and pursue it relentlessly. Then maybe you'll understand what it takes to build something meaningful." I turned to my old colleagues, who now seemed more uncomfortable than they had ever been around me. "If you want to be part of this world," I said, "you must embrace growth, not sabotage. Collaboration, integrity, and hard work are non-negotiable. No more gossip, no more dismissive attitudes. You either contribute or you step aside." As I spoke, I felt a strange combination of relief and strength. For years, I had carried the weight of their expectations, the sting of their disbelief. Now, I was handing them a choice: grow, evolve, and engage with respect, or continue living in the small world of their own limitations. I wasn't asking for blind obedience. I was asking for courage. The courage to confront their own patterns, to acknowledge mistakes, to step into a version of themselves that they had neglected. Some of them flinched, others hesitated, but slowly, I could see the wheels turning. This wasn't punishment, it was opportunity. I was compassionate but firm, showing them the door to their better selves while remaining rooted in my own achievements. And through it all, I kept my tone calm, measured, but filled with authority. No bitterness, no vindictiveness, only a clear line drawn between the woman I had become and the doubts that had once tried to define me. This was more than power. This was clarity, the ability to choose how my energy would be spent, who would enter my life on equal footing, and who would remain outside the circle of my growth. For the first time in a long while, I felt completely in control not just of my business, but of my history, my relationships, and my own narrative. I was offering them a mirror, and for some, it was uncomfortable. For others, it was a chance to finally see themselves. And I would let them decide which reflection they wanted to embrace. Weeks passed, and I began to notice changes, subtle, quiet, but undeniably real. My mother started volunteering at a local nonprofit she had always talked about, her smile more genuine, her conversations less burdened by criticism. Mark, surprisingly, enrolled in a leadership course and even asked for my advice on a project he was passionate about. My former colleagues approached me differently now, respectfully, thoughtfully, with an eagerness to learn rather than to judge. I watched all of this with a calm satisfaction, the kind that comes from knowing you've done what you could and the rest is up to them. But the true reward wasn't just in their growth, it was in the clarity I gained about myself. I had endured ridicule, skepticism, and doubt, yet I had never surrendered my vision. Every late night, every rejection, every lonely moment of perseverance had culminated in this: a woman who owned her destiny, unapologetically, and in a way that inspired others to rise alongside her. One evening, as I closed my office for the night, my fingers brushed against the leather notebook Grandma Helen had given me years ago. I opened it, tracing the faded handwriting, remembering the day she had said, "Nobody else's opinion matters but yours." I smiled, the weight of that wisdom settling over me like a warm embrace. That simple gift had been my compass, guiding me through uncertainty and fear, and now it stood as a testament to everything I had built. I stood by the window, looking out at the city lights glittering like distant stars. I thought of the tiny office that had been mocked, the long nights of struggle, and the summit stage that had once felt impossibly far away. I thought of the people who had doubted me, and of the choices I had made, not just to succeed, but to lead with integrity and compassion. In that quiet moment, I realized that power and independence were not measured by wealth alone, but by the strength to define your own path, to rise above the limitations others impose, and to lift those willing to grow alongside you. I closed the notebook gently and whispered to myself, a declaration more than a thought. I am more than they imagined, and I will never settle for less than my own truth. And for the first time in years, I felt completely, unshakably whole.